Welcome to SafetyNet, your regular guide to the latest news, issues and developments in track safety. Coming up in this edition, the latest news on track warning systems, safety barriers go on trial with Balfour Beatty, and Virgin wins gold for Near Miss 2. But first, Railtrack has been investigating two recent accidents in which two men died and another was seriously injured. In the first incident at Witton, Birmingham on the 27th of January, a distant lookout lost an arm and had both legs broken after being hit by a train. And on the 10th of March at Ebbo Junction in South Wales, a collision resulted in two fatalities.
The Amey Railways and agency track workers were all said to be familiar with the geographical area and had been briefed about that day's working conditions and locations. At the time of the accident, the group was carrying out maintenance work on points on the down main line at Ebbo Junction. The two men killed had moved to a position 50 yards away to work with noisy equipment.
Well, the incident is subject to formal investigation, but our preliminary investigations reveal that the gang was working on a pair of points with some powered plant equipment. They had adequate protection at that time. However, two members of the gang moved to a place where they could not be adequately protected, and tragically they were struck and killed by a train.
In the aftermath of the incident, Amey Railways issued a Pike-Hour work rule reminder, telling all staff within any work group that they should be encouraged to challenge safety arrangements at any time. In addition, it's believed that Railtrack's inquiry will recommend that briefing material on the hazards of noisy equipment, the use of whistles and horns, and moving work sites be distributed throughout the industry. In the Witton incident, a distant lookout broke both legs and subsequently had an arm amputated when he was struck by a train that had passed the work group, who had all stood clear.
Work was taking place under red zone conditions to carry out fettling of the switch and crossing on the down line. The distance lookout man was positioned some 473 yards south of the work site. It is understood that he acknowledged the approaching train's warning signal. However, after the train had passed, the work group could not see him, and on investigation discovered that he'd been struck a glancing blow by the train.
Railtrack's investigation has proved inconclusive, as the worker has been too seriously injured to be interviewed so far. GTRM say they're looking into the use of an easily carried, lightweight, rigid trackside barrier to protect their lookouts, together with an additional card in their Toolbox Talk and Information Card series.
GTRM's full statement and Amy's Pike-Hour reminder are available in the data stream of text pages at the end of the programme. The IWS track warning system has completed a programme of extensive trials on the West Coast Main Line in Scotland. It's the first such device to be used live on the UK network at line speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. 3 test sites were chosen at Beatuck Summit, Kirtle Bridge and Carstairs Junction.
The system, which has been in use in Germany for 2 years and Italy since the beginning of this year, was most recently trialled at Carstairs Junction under red zone conditions, replacing sleepers. Each worker is issued with a radio backpack, which sounds an alarm in response to signals originating from a central control unit, alerted by remote sensors placed on the rail either side of the worksite. Effective calibration of the sensors is crucial, but relatively simple.
Down at Kirtle Bridge it took us 14 minutes. That's setting up the whole lot.
The central control unit, along with the backpacks and sensors, is battery powered. As the first train axle passes over the sensors, each backpack sounds an alert. When all the train's axles have been counted out of the work section, the all clear is given.
The real trial for this is, would you trust your life to the system? And we did the desktop exercise, went to site, talked to the staff. The system had failed safe during the week. We deliberately set up a failure mechanism. It responded as it was supposed to do. Talked to the staff, and although the responsibility was mine, I gave them the final say on whether or not they would put their faith in the system, and they were happy to do that.
The makers claim advantages of the IWS system include no mains supply or extensive cabling required. Individual backpacks ensure quietness of operation to reduce annoyance to residents, and fail-safe reliability.
The beauty of it as well is there'll be more men working, and we're eliminating mistakes that human beings normally make, picking up trains and everything. I mean, that goes without saying. So therefore there'll be more men working, there'll be more work done, and the men should feel safer about the track with it. Seriously.
It's expected that development work will reduce the size of the backpacks to minimise discomfort reported during the trials. Type approval of the system is likely during the summer.
Well, the Signalling Standards Manager for Railtrack Scotland joins me from Carstairs Junction. Jim Gillis, what's the latest state of play with IWS?
The IWS is now being tested in a live situation here at Carstairs to facilitate the type approval of the system for use in Railtrack in Britain. We've taken it to Carstairs East Junction, where we have a fairly complex junction layout, and we've put sensors on all the possible locations where trains might approach the work site. This is so that we're happy that the system will detect all trains that are likely to approach the work site, and so far we're happy that the system has done that.
And what sort of feedback have you had about the system?
Feedback from the people on the track, both at the initial trials last year and again in this trials, has been very, very favourable. They are keen on the system, they find it reliable. Obviously they're using it in conjunction with a traditional safety system at the moment, but they are happy that the system is warning them of all approaching trains.
Jim Gillis, thank you. There are 3 other automatic track warning systems currently under consideration for use on the network: Minimel 90, ARW 52 and Track.
Minimel 90 is closest to full approval, with the safety case being considered by HM Railway Inspectorate, which is resolving the final details of operational matters with Railtrack and the contractors. It's hoped that it can be released for trackside operations by the end of June. With Minimel paving the way, ARW 52 has followed the Minimel safety case closely, although no specific date has yet been fixed for its introduction. After the track system's latest trials at Slade Lane Junction, Manchester in February, Railtrack are in the process of awarding contracts to consultants to satisfy the safety case for Series 2 of the system. Meanwhile, changes to allow the use of these new systems have already been published as part of the April periodic operating notices and will be in December's rulebook amendments.
A contractor working on a bridge over the East Coast Main Line was severely burned after a cable came into contact with the overhead line equipment. The accident happened on April the 14th at Croxdale in County Durham, whilst cables powering portable tools were being cleared. A wire dropped from the parapet onto the live overhead line equipment, resulting in severe burns to the contractor, who was rushed to hospital. A full investigation is currently being undertaken by Railtrack and the Health and Safety Executive. In light of that incident, our regular safety file feature now takes a look at regulations governing work on or about AC electrified lines.
With 25,000 volts powering the system, the primary rule is to treat the overhead line as live at all times, unless you have a permit to work on it, which will ensure it is isolated and earthed, and show the area that the permit covers. And remember that the issue of a permit to work does not mean that train movements are stopped on the lines concerned. Similarly, permission to work in a possession doesn't mean that the OLE has been isolated. You must, in addition, have been issued with Section A of the working instructions for AC electrified lines, and hold the PTS certificate with the AC endorsement. So, when you have no permit, you must keep yourself, your clothing, tools and equipment at least 9 feet, that's 2.75 metres, from anything attached to or hanging from the overhead line equipment. That equipment includes the return conductor, cantilever or headspan, contact wire, catenary wire and train pantograph. Take extra care not to come within 9 feet or 2.75 metres in cuttings or on embankments, structures or vehicles, and use ladders made of wood or approved non-conducting material not reinforced by metal. Certain bonds connected to the rails are marked in red at the rail ends, and if disconnected, could result in a dangerous voltage arising. These red bonds must be disturbed only by those authorised by the electrification engineer.
Two manufacturers have recently trialled their safety barriers with Balfour Beatty. Both Infra Safety Services and Vortok International's fences are quick to set up, offer a physical barrier and don't require stakes to be driven into the ballast.
The traditional blue mesh fencing, requiring CAT scanning for the support posts and offering limited protective qualities, has at last got some serious competition. The German-designed Vortok track guard system uses rigid components to form a barrier which can be adjusted to provide clearances of 4 foot or 6'6".
And the spars very quickly fasten to the fence by snapping into place. So one at the top and one at the bottom.
The Vortok fencing offers a physical barrier to anyone falling against it.
You can see it's very strong, but it's springy, it's resilient and takes the load.
The Infra safety fence seeks to achieve a similar result in a slightly different way. The posts are clamped to the base of the rail to provide a support for tensioned nylon webbing.
We simply hook over the tape, feed it out, simply slip it behind the clip, hold it into place.
Once tensioned, the webbing then forms a fence far superior to the traditional blue plastic mesh.
I'm 13.5 stone and I have no problems.
Both fences were praised by Balfour Beatty.
There are significant benefits from using these types of fencing in terms of increased safety and reduced costs in relation to production.
Vortok is currently in discussion with Railtrack to ensure its fencing complies with necessary electrical safety standards.
Time now for other track safety stories in brief.
Railtrack has taken action to reduce the number of possession irregularities occurring on the network by developing 3 new standards of competence for PICOPs and engineering supervisors, which will relate to the number of train movements within a possession. As Railtrack's Keith Watson explains, most possession irregularities threatening personal or train safety are the result of a failure of communication.
Whether that results then in things like detonators or marker boards being placed in the wrong position, or the PICOP and the engineering supervisor and the signaller failing to reach a clear understanding between them, any one of those can in actual fact lead to a possession irregularity.
Railtrack is developing training plans to implement the new standards of competence and hopes to start rolling them out across the industry towards the end of this year. Railtrack's hazard directory, which has been distributed on paper since last December, will be available on computer disk in the autumn. Contractors will be able to manipulate data electronically, for example, to locate hazards in a particular work location or along a specific line, to enable them to brief their staff accordingly. And it's also hoped that its ease of use will minimise red zone working.
It's very important that in fact we maximise green zone working, and what that hazard directory can tell you is in certain areas it's inappropriate to actually use red zone working at all. In other words, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to, with the hazards and the train service, actually do work in a red zone anyway.
Railtrack's Safety and Standards Directorate, under the leadership of Rod Muttram, has recently implemented a number of important changes to enhance its effectiveness in ensuring that risks are adequately controlled and assisting the industry to achieve that aim. The changes are designed to ensure improved visibility, objectivity and consistency of process, best use and coordination of safety intelligence, a focus on controls in a risk management framework, greater proactive assurance of operator competence, and greater assurance of risk control. The Track Safety Strategy Group was invited to hold its April meeting at the headquarters of Her Majesty's Railway Inspectorate in London. Chairman Aidan Nelson began the 5-hour meeting by asking for a minute's silence in memory of the 2 workers who lost their lives in the Ebbw Junction accident in March. Chief Inspector of Railways, Stan Robertson, whose successor has recently been announced as Vic Coleman, applauded the committee's safety achievements to date. A wide range of safety issues were discussed, including the Witten and Ebu accidents, safety barriers, high visibility clothing, early warning devices and changes to the rulebook. The TSSG will meet again, this time as guests of London Underground on June the 18th.
And finally, a video commissioned by the Track Safety Strategy Group and produced by Virgin's Alan Swan has received a Gold Award from the International Visual Communication Association. His programme, Near Miss 2, won top prize for the best health and safety communication. The judges felt that Near Miss 2 was an excellent documentary-based programme with high production values. Alan said the award was a tribute to the close cooperation and help of all those in the industry who had made the video possible. Well, that's all from this edition. Stand by to select Freeze on your video remote if you want to access our data stream of text pages at the end of the programme. The Safety Lines newsletter will be with you in 2 months' time. SafetyNet itself returns in August. From the team, goodbye.